If you finished the Way Home series finale and immediately asked yourself why Kat and Elliot did not get married, why this show spent 4 seasons building the most emotionally loaded, slow burn romance it had, gave them a proposal that brought the cast to tears on set, and then handed the actual wedding to Jacob and Abby Goodwin instead, you are not alone. It was the creative decision that surprised fans the most. And now, showrunners Heather Conkey and Alexandra Clark have explained exactly why they made it. And I honestly think once you hear their reasoning, the choice does not just make sense. It becomes the only possible right answer. Let's walk through everything. The real reason Jacob's wedding came before Kat and Elliot's. What the showrunners said about the proposal being its own complete moment. Why this particular wedding carries the weight of the entire show's mythology in a way a Kat and Elliot ceremony simply could not have. What it meant to see all those faces: Colton, Fern, Cliff, Evelyn, Thomas, Susanna, Elijah, at the pond for Jacob and Abby's vows. And then the detail Clark gave about watching the finale a second time that honestly made me need a minute after I read it. First, Jacob. Because Heather Conkey's explanation starts here and everything else follows from it. When Variety asked why they chose Jacob's wedding over Kat's, Conkey said it plainly. Jacob was the one who had to sacrifice the most. He needed his happy ending in the present day without any risk of thinking he wouldn't take that step. He's taking it. And I honestly think that sentence does more work than it might seem to on first reading. Because Jacob Landry's entire arc across 4 seasons has been about a man who kept running, who could not stay, who left everyone who loved him, and then spent years not understanding why he couldn't come back. He has been chased by Thomas's voice calling him a coward. He made his peace with Elijah, a Landry ancestor who told him the farm still exists because of him, and that peace gave him the permission to stay that he had never been able to give himself. And Abby Goodwin walked into his life at exactly the moment he was finally capable of choosing someone. He is taking that step, Conkey says, and the show needed to show us that it was taken, fully and formally without ambiguity, because Jacob Landry has spent 4 years leaving. His wedding is the show saying, this time, he stays. Conkey also addressed the question of Kat and Elliot directly, and the answer is so simple it is almost disarming. We know that Kat and Elliot are going to get married. They're engaged. That would have been too many weddings. 2 weddings in a 90-minute finale would have split the emotional weight between them and guaranteed neither one landed with the force it deserved. And I honestly think that is just true. Ceremonies require the audience to be fully present, fully feeling, and you cannot be fully present for 2 of them in the same hour without one of them becoming background to the other. Alexandra Clark expanded on this in her interview with TV Insider, and what she said about the Kat and Elliot piece of this is the thing I want everyone to hear. I think the real thing that everyone wanted to see with Kat and Elliot was the proposal and the putting of Susanna's ring on her finger and her saying, yes, the ring. Susanna's ring, the ring that Alice gave to Jacob so he could propose to Abby, the one that originally belonged to an ancestor of this family from the 1800s. Except that before Jacob used it for Abby, it was on Kat's finger first. The proposal, with Alice playing her original song, Already Home, underneath it. Clark told people that this scene brings her to tears every single time she watches it. And when she said it in the interview, her voice confirmed it was doing exactly that in real time. That was a really emotional day on set. It was our last day at the farm. We were all a mess, but it was beautiful, and they handled it so well. They were so amazing. The last day at the farm, everyone crying, and Chyler Lee and Evan Williams in the middle of it, handling the most important scene their characters had ever shared. That is not just a proposal scene. That is 4 seasons of almost and finally compressed into one moment on a farm that has been the center of this entire story. And Clark is right that we did not need a wedding after that. We had everything. But the second reason for Jacob's wedding is bigger than just emotional logistics. Clark told Variety that the wedding itself is emblematic of where the show always wanted to end. One of the interesting things about the 70s and 80s timeline this season was showing that there was a time when the founding families were all friends. They sat around tables at the kitchen party and talked about the future. Vic, Tessa, Evelyn, Colton, and Dell. 3 families. The Landrys, the Goodwins, the Augustines, all of them once in the same kitchen, around the same table, talking about what comes next. And then life happened to all of them. Grief, secrets, time, absence, resentment. And those 3 families spent decades fractured from each other in ways that the show's entire mythology was built on the ruins of. Jacob Landry marrying Abby Goodwin is the show saying, it's over. The feud is over. The distance is over. What was broken between these families is finally, formally, at the level of a legal ceremony in front of everyone they have ever loved, put back together. And Clark said clearly, you wouldn't have necessarily had that with a Kat and Elliot wedding. Because Kat and Elliot's marriage would have been their story. A love story. A beautiful one. But Jacob and Abby's wedding is the founding family's story. It is the show's thesis written into a ceremony at the pond where all of this began. And then there is what Clark said about the wedding itself needing to happen for a completely different reason. The wedding was also essential for understanding who Casey, actually was. The revelation that Casey is Jacob and Abby's future child only fully lands when you have seen them choose each other permanently in front of everyone. You needed the wedding to confirm that this relationship is not temporary, not just present-day comfort, not just Port Haven slowing down a girl who was planning to leave. It is permanent. It is family. And Casey came from that permanence. Clark said it herself. It's the wedding of the one, the boy who fell through time and saved their family. Jacob, the boy who kept leaving and finally stopped. Now, who was at that wedding? Because this is the detail that completed it emotionally in a way no description can fully do justice to. Jacob and Abby said their vows at the pond, and surrounding them, present as figments and echoes rather than physically, because on this show the past doesn't travel forward, it visits, were Elijah, Susanna, Thomas, Fern, and Cliff, Evelyn, and Colton. Every founding family member who shaped this history. Every person whose choices, mistakes, loves, and losses led to this exact moment at this exact pond. Clark confirmed to TV Line that they were not physically there. They were figments, echoes, the show's way of saying everyone who came before is here in the only way the past can ever be present at the future's ceremonies. And Colton specifically. Clark confirmed that Dell was not the only one who saw him. Kat also saw Colton at the wedding. Kat smiles when she sees him, Clark said. She sees him absolutely. Dell's great love, the man at the center of this entire family's grief, and the center of Dell's own healing journey across 4 seasons, present at his son's wedding in the only form the universe allows. I honestly think that detail, Kat seeing him, smiling, not saying anything, is one of the most quietly beautiful things in the entire finale. And then Alexandra Clark said something about watching the finale a second time that has stayed with me since I first read it. She told people that when they watch the finale for the first time, watch it at face value. Let it be the story. But the second time, watch it knowing that the final scene at the pond, the last lines, the last jump are not just Kat and Alice. It's not just Kat saying those lines, it's Chyler. And it's not just Alice saying those lines, it's Sadie. Clark said that last scene was really hard for everyone to get through because those were actors who had played those characters for 4 seasons on the last day of shooting, saying goodbye to a story they had been living inside. And the lines they were saying about endings being new beginnings, about jumping one more time, were true for the show and true for the people making it simultaneously. Chyler Lee and Sadie LaFlamme Snow, holding hands at the edge of a pond, jumping into the unknown. The characters going somewhere we don't get to follow. The actors walking off a set they won't come back to. Every ending is a new beginning. Kat says that, Chyler says that, and then they jump. The Way Home is streaming in full on Hallmark Plus, with seasons 1 through 3 available on Netflix right now. Drop a comment and tell me, did Jacob and Abby's wedding hit you differently once you understood what it was actually representing? And when you go back and watch that final scene now, knowing that it's also Chyler and Sadie saying goodbye, does it land in a way that the first watch couldn't have prepared you for? Because it does for me, every single time.